Korea is often described as one of the world's most education-driven societies. Yet, this image sits uneasily alongside the early decline observed in its workers' cognitive skills. At first glance, this may seem surprising. According to the OECD's Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies, around a decade ago, Korean workers in their 20s ranked near the top in numeracy and literacy. In more recent surveys, however, their scores have fallen to around the OECD average. The more critical issue is not the decline itself, but what lies behind it. In Korea, cognitive skills tend to deteriorate rapidly with age, with the decline becoming particularly pronounced after the age of 50. This pattern becomes even clearer when compared with other advanced economies. As Korean workers move from their late 20s into their early 40s, numeracy scores fall by 14.1 points, and literacy scores by 18.94 points. This suggests that cognitive skill loss begins at a relatively early stage. By contrast, in countries such as the US, Japan, and Italy, cognitive skills during young adulthood are generally maintained or even improved. Contrast becomes more pronounced in middle and older age. Some decline with age is natural, but the pace observed in Korea is unusually fast. This raises a fundamental question. What is driving this early and rapid loss of cognitive skills? Several factors are commonly cited, including demanding working conditions, especially long working hours, low participation in lifelong learning, limited autonomy in the workplace, and underdeveloped human resource practices. Another key factor lies in the wage system itself. When workers' capabilities and productivity are not adequately rewarded through pay, incentives to invest in skill development remain weak. Empirical evidence shows that even a decade ago, wage returns to cognitive skills in Korea were less than half those observed in major advanced economies, such as the US, Japan, and Germany. This pattern has largely persisted to the present day. The contrast is especially striking when compared with Germany and Japan. Like Korea, both are super-aged societies with manufacturing-based economies, yet they provide substantially higher wage rewards for skills. In Korea, wages tend to rise primarily with tenure, rather than with skills or performance. This seniority-based structure is far more pronounced than in Japan, Germany, or most other OECD countries. In addition, wage gaps by firm size are exceptionally wide. Workers in large firms with 1,000 or more employees earn roughly 30% more than those in very small establishments with 10 or fewer workers. Under this structure, competition for positions at large firms has become increasingly intense, centered on academic credentials and formal qualifications. Once employment is secured, however, incentives to continue investing in one's skills remain limited. Over time, this can erode workers' cognitive skills. How then can workers' capabilities be strengthened?
역량과 성과에 대한 보상은 노동 생산성 향상을 위한 핵심적인 조건입니다. 하지만 우리나라는 인지 역량에 대한 보상 수준이 매우 낮은 것으로 나타나 근로자의 역량 개발 요인이 충분하지 않은 상태로 판단됩니다. 따라서 직무급이나 성과급과 같이 역량을 중심으로 한 임금 체계가 확산될 필요가 있고, 이를 위해서는 직무의 체계화 그리고 성과 측정 기반의 마련이 필요합니다. 이와 함께 우리가 일하는 방식, 조직 문화, 그리고 인적 자원 관리 전반에 대한 점검도 병행될 필요가 있겠습니다.
Greater flexibility in working hours can help secure the time needed for learning and training. When these learning outcomes are systematically linked to wages, skill development shifts from an individual choice to a natural and integral part of working life.